very well defined, certain tech cards can perhaps influence those bans. But let's find out who is it going to be, Savvat or Vinz, taking their win in round number 2. Going into game number 1, it is going to be a Druid mirror. But here Vinz has a Spiteful Druid. Savvat, however, this looks to me like the Druid deck that we saw Muzz with at HCT. This is a token-style Druid deck.
I just switched between like every kind of Druid deck I could possibly imagine. I was like, Greedy Sprite, oh okay, it's Spiteful.
Hadronox,
Open Summons, yes, Hadronox. And then, as you said, the Spreading Plague obviously messing with the Witching Hour. You cannot have those beasts in a Hadronox deck. And with Soul of the Forest and the Savage Roar in there as well, it definitely looks to be Muzzy's deck, which got him, one game away from qualifying through to the Summer Championships later on in this year, obviously being taken down by Dog at the final hurdle. But a tremendously good showing. And this deck, while it had a very small sample size, because he was the only player to bring it to the Americas playoffs, had a very good win rate. It did very well for him, even though a lot of players, I have to admit, seemed pretty doubtful of it. They didn't see the power level, but I have high hopes here for Savvat.
It's a very cool deck. The power level of this deck coming primarily through Whispering Woods, which generates 1/1 tokens for each card you have in your hand, and then using that in combination with Soul of the Forest, and then with Savage Roar, you can push through a lot of damage, particularly against a deck that has a difficult time removing a wide board state unless they have a board state of their own, much like the Spiteful Druid.
And this is kind of a weird matchup because, you know, Spiteful Druid is not really a board that goes particularly wide most of the time. Like, it's usually a few minions, like 2, 3, 4. So the Spreading Plague is not going to be a blowout victory as it has been in some matchups in the past. Like against when Murloc Paladin was at its peak in the last year, like you would just keep the Spreading Plague, especially when it was 5 mana, because you would just win through getting so many Scarabs put up in the way. But in this matchup, like you said, you kind of have to get those tricks rolling where you're going Plague into Soul of the Forest, where to get those big buffs to pull things back in your favor.
You need to find that one board that sticks around, and then with Savage Roar or with Soul of the Forest, you can usually spiral the win very quickly with just a couple combinations of cards. But here with Vinz, having that Prince Kalisteth down early and then finding the Spiteful Summoner, which he's going to very likely play next turn, Savvat is going to have his own difficulties clearing up the board from Vinz, because are these decks playing naturalized, Derek? We don't really have hard removal from this style of token Druid deck.
Yeah, it feels like, I mean, traditionally in Hearthstone, you have to have a strong reason to play Naturalize more than just, I think it's a good card. Because it's not a good enough card usually to find its spot in deck lists. Obviously, as a kind of pseudo-dark pack to kill off your own Hadronox in the Taunt versions, as Vinz throws down the Spiteful, gets the 2 out of 5, 12/12. Not the best one, obviously, to hit the Tyrantus, but like you said, with not all too many targeting spells in this deck list, probably won't be too much of a difference. But even so, this is going looking to be a pretty miserable situation for Savvat, because he has, like you said, all these tricksy cards that he can start making things happen with Savage Roar and Soul of the Forest, but he needs a board first. And with a Deathwing staring him down, the chances of him actually making a board seem increasingly low.
So Savvat's 2 methods of clearing up this Deathwing would be building a big board, Savage Roar, running it all in, or Malfurion the Pestilent for spiders, and somehow keeping one of those spiders around with the ability to attack into the Deathwing next turn. I don't see either of these methods panning out, but dang it, he's going to try.
He's giving it his best shot. I mean, Malfurion was probably going to come down no matter what on this turn, because, you're either playing Malfurion or Spreading Plague for 2 Scarabs anyway. There's not really any point to go for the Plague over the Malfurion, and everything else just looked very lackluster indeed. And going for the spiders, like you said, it's not likely to work out, but it's an optimistic play, and if it does work out, he's in a fantastic spot leading up to the Ultimate Infestation, and maybe he's starting to make that Soul of the Forest work, but he goes off with the Mind Control tech. There really wasn't any bad outcome there, to be honest. He either gets a Taunt out of the way so he can kill off the spiders, or he just gets a spider of his own, which is fantastic, and he's looking to plow to face very easily. Maybe not with the Deathwing on this turn, because I'm thinking he might need to take out a Scarab with it, but basically, it's a pretty good outcome.
He doesn't have to take out a Scarab. He can Spellbreaker the Spider, run the Firefly and the Druid of the Scythe taunt form into the Scarab, and then Deathwing to face if he so chooses. That Void Ripper is a tech choice that I am not used to seeing in Spiteful Druid.
Me neither.
Be very good against even Shaman. And, you know, maybe in some ways can facilitate some favorable trades, but it's not an obvious choice.
It's not. I haven't really seen that card at all since, like, Windello's kind of combo priest ideas he was messing about with. Like, it was
pint-sized potion.
Yeah. It was
priest.
popular back then. But this is kind of the best spreading plague you are ever going to get in this matchup. 6 Scarabs is completely absurd. But even then, it's just so easy for Vinz to clear up at least 3 of these Scarabs, likely 4, if he can get any kind of tricksy trades going in there. And he is just 1 ultimate infestation or the Grand Archivist away from just refueling his hand and putting himself in an incredibly favorable position.
Okay, so one of the spiders kills off a Scarab. You have one of the 4 attack minions plus a hero power kills off another. The Druid of the Scythe can rush into one with the mind control tech. So at most, I'm seeing Savvat left with 3 Scarabs on board. If you have 3 Scarabs on board, you can then Savage Roar. That's 9 damage, 11 without a hero power.
And you could go, Savage Roar into Branching Paths for an extra 2. That's 5 damage guys that are attacking through to face.
Or you can Savage Roar and Soul of the Forest, but you can't do everything.
Exactly. And the thing is, unless this changes dramatically in a way I cannot see happening, 3 minions, or like even just 2 minions, is probably the most he's going to have on board. So he has to make do with what he's got at the moment in terms of Soul of the Forest, Savage Roar, and the Branching Paths. Even if there were no taunts on the board, it's nowhere near pushing forward enough damage here. He just has to find a way to survive until Ultimate Infestation. And the way it currently stands, even with a 1-mana 8/8, it's still not going to be enough here, I don't think, Cora.
Well, Sea Giant makes a world of sense in this deck, but unfortunately, Savvat had all of the pieces to maintain a large board after he had built that initial one, did not find the ability to build that initial one. And sometimes when you're staring down a Spiteful Summoner on turn 5, now that turn 6 in this case, now that there are only 5 10-drop options and 2 of them have 24 stats and 1 of them can't be targeted by spells, sometimes there's just really nothing that you can do.
I mean, it was one of those games. It was, Vinz, like, he played it well, but he got the Keleseth into Spiteful Summoner. You're really not supposed to beat that matchup with this kind of Druid deck, I don't believe. He would have to get such a wide board at the start and stick something with Soul of the Forest, which wasn't quite there. It came incredibly close, it's worth pointing out, with Greedy Sprite into the Oaken Summons as well. A very nice board at the start, but just not quite there for Savvat. So this is very likely, I believe, to be his Druid deck here, the token Druid taken out with the Spiteful Druid going up 1-0, it would appear.
Well, he's gonna clean up the board as much as he can. Armor for 12 here.
I don't know. Maybe Ultimate Infestation on the following turn could start to pull this back. But he's playing with the concede button, throwing it down. Vinz takes a very nice victory, and he's left now taking another game with his Spiteful Druid. So, with the counter decks available to Savvat, Warlock and Shaman, do you like your odds with either of those decks, assuming it's Cube and even Shaman?
Assuming it's Cube and even Shaman, Cube can be explosive in any matchup. It's important to note.
Very true.
You get that skull down, even a Spiteful Summoner and a Deathwing has a hard time getting through a Void Lord. So I don't think that's a terrible matchup. And even Shaman, honestly, it can race the Spiteful.
Very true.
It gets wide very quickly, and then like we were saying, the Spiteful Druid, once there's a board on the opponent's side, can have a difficult time dealing with it. All they have is minion-to-minion combat. So I can see either of these decks faring reasonably well, but I myself would probably be a little bit more comfortable with the Warlock. And then obviously if you throw Control Warlock into the mix, like I think we're seeing here, that changes things up just a little bit. But one of the really interesting things with Last Hero Standing that we don't see a lot of in Conquest is that ability to counter. Because once you win with a deck, you're locked into that deck as your next deck choice, and then the opponent has the ability to counter that deck directly. But when you have this hand, how much can you really do?
It's absurd. Look at this. He's got 1, 2, 3, something on 4, whatever, coin into Spiteful. That feels pretty good to me indeed. As Savvat's hand is not bad. Doomsayer can slow things down a bit, and then you follow up with either on turn 3 or more likely turn 4. The Stonehill Defender start pulling things back in your favor. However, if Savvat is going to be taking this, he needs to start finding his own power plays. Going with the kind of mediocre plays, curving out reasonably well, is not going to lead to a victory here, especially with even the Greedy Sprite picked up for a turn earlier, Spiteful Summoner.
So, for Savvat, He's ideally going to be looking to put that Doomsayer on the board before, going into Vince's turn 5. Because he knows Vince is on the coin.
Yes.
If he's got Spiteful, he's going to want to coin that Spiteful, throw that Doomsayer down, try to throw that turn off for a bit, and then maybe get your own board down, maybe find Siphon Soul. Those are really the only means that Savvat has to countering the Spiteful Summoner by the time it comes down. But no, he's just going to try and take this board back a little bit earlier. And now we're looking at coin Spiteful into Spiteful. Twisting Nether doesn't come down until turn 8.
I mean, he could just play Greedy Sprite here if he wanted to, purely for just as a wild growth. And he's going for it just to gain the Mana Crystal, because obviously you gain an empty Mana Crystal, so going into his next turn, he wants to play it on this turn so that he gets the full Mana Crystal on the following turn. Just ridiculous.
Okay, Voodoo Doll's a nice pickup.
That's true.
That at least will deal with
anything.
The first minion that comes out of the Spiteful Summon.
Yeah, even Tyrantus is a battle cry.
Yeah.
Not a spell targeting it. But yeah, like you said, that deals with the first one. What are you going to do against the second one? I suppose
we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Right, okay, I like that thinking. Vince playing the one he got off the top. It's an extra +1/+1. I guess that's probably worth playing it over the other one that was gained, even though Savvat would probably guess that to be a Spiteful Summoner. But the thing is here, for Savvat, Vince got pretty much the perfect starting hand, but Savvat just has to survive a little bit longer. Like you said, he has the ability to survive against this first one with most likely Voodoo Doll Defile, but could potentially just see Voodoo Doll and not killing it off on this turn. It seems incredibly risky, and I don't think I like it.
But are there reasons for it?
Yes.
Yes.
You have 2 cons on board to potentially counter the 2 minions on board. Maybe Vince doesn't have a means of connecting with 12 damage this turn.
But if you're met with a silence, obviously, that's just it. Like, you're just taking way too much damage there to even consider anything else. As another go with the Spiteful Summoner here, Savvat just has to survive 2 more turns until he can go for the Twisting Nethers, even Twisting Nether into Twisting Nether into Gul'dan. And if he was going to do that, the 8/8 is kind of the best option he could hope for. Honestly, considering this was a Keleseth into coin Spiteful on turns 4 and 5, sorry. This is really not that bad. Like,
this could be worse.
It could be, considering how terrible this is. Savvat's in a better spot than I think he would usually end up being in here.
Don't get me wrong, things are really bad.
They're bad.
And Vince is going to connect for 13 damage next turn, plus get a Vicious Fledgling on the board.
Agreed.
And Savvat still will not have access to Twisting Nether just yet.
Yes.
But in an alternate universe, maybe he's dead already. And that would be much worse.
So, not actually, I was obviously excited at the pickup of Malfurion there, because Malfurion on 7 feels pretty good because it's not too much value being committed and you can upgrade that hero power to start going for the Smork. But Vicious Fledgling here is pretty good because, you know, it's an anti-control card. You're going into turn 7 instead of turn 8. But I guess then maybe you're starting to look at Lord Godfrey as a potential card that could just blow up your entire board if you're not careful.
That is a possibility, because Vince is considering the Druid of the Scythe this turn to rush into that Stonehill and then a hero power to kill off the Voidwalker, allowing for 17 damage to connect. But then Lord Godfrey comes down, and then you have the 2, the 4. You wouldn't have the ability to kill Emrys. Yeah, Emrys would live at 2. But he would have put Savvat down to 3. So then Godfrey wouldn't be enough anyway.
Yeah.
But this is quite a powerful turn as well. Maybe more of an investment into future turns.
Right.
But how many future turns are there really? Looking like none.
That's the thing. So what this play says to me is Vince thinks he will get more damage through with Malfurion because he emitted 4 damage on this turn because he didn't go for the hero power, and he could have still developed a pretty good board. He missed even more, actually, because he could have gone rough
emitted
with
8.
And he thinks he can get in more with that than with the Malfurion over following turns, which is not ridiculous. That it will get in a lot of damage, most likely. But Savvat realizes this is just not happening. If there's not lethal on board, there is lethal on board, actually, with the hero power. Nothing to be done here. It looks like he's going down 2-0 to one of the most ridiculous couple games of Spiteful Druid I've ever seen.
That's a feels bad, man, when you got 2 Twisting Nethers and Gul'dan in hand.
Yeah.
And Savvat didn't have a bad start by any means. He had 2 Stonehill defenders. He had the Voodoo Doll and the Defile to kill off the first
pull off of this the Spiteful Summoner, but still just too much power from this Spiteful Druid deck. And now you're seeing why this is, I think it was actually the most popular choice for North America in HCT. It was the most brought deck last weekend. And now in a Last Hero Standing format, when decks can sweep opponents' lineups by themselves, this is going to be one of the most powerful choices, I would say, alongside that Even Paladin and, one of those Warlock variants like we just saw.
Absolutely. And, that's the reason why Spiteful Druid is so good, because it doesn't have a miserable matchup against anything, pretty much. It doesn't have particularly fantastic matchups against most decks, but it's just fine. It's just good against everything. It's completely innocuous the majority of the time. And especially when you're banning away Paladin, the Even Paladin is, I suppose, the worst matchup you're usually going to be facing as the Spiteful Druid. Getting rid of that, you feel fantastic.
Okay, so Savvat has one more shot. He's going to have to reverse sweep with this Even Shaman. And Even Shaman is sort of one of those sleeper decks that a lot of the pros are saying is very, very powerful. And not a lot of people are taking advantage of it right now. But it has quite a mountain to climb if it wants to win Savvat this match.
And I think you could argue quite reasonably that this is like slightly favored matchups against all three remaining decks here. If it's Even Paladin and Questrogue, as we expect it to be from the majority of the lineups being brought, like, it's not miserable. It's an early token-based, relatively aggressive deck. Those tend to do good against the Questrogue. They tend to do reasonably well if they can really lock down the board against Spiteful Druid. And against the Even Paladin, everyone is talking about how it's supposed to be Even Paladin. That's why you bring it.
It's supposed to. I suppose we'll get into that when we see it. And Vinz with his third consecutive Keleseth on turn 2 in this match.
Oh my goodness.
Savvat coined into that Primal Fin knowing that he was going to want to put down the Stormforge decks this turn and start chipping away at that board. This is really where the Shaman gains its leverage, is by getting down these smaller minions, the hero powers for 1 mana, and then throwing that Flame Tongue Totem down and just getting those value trades over and over again.
That is true. But Keleseth into Saronite Chain Gang.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, that will probably shut things down. I mean, oh man, 2017 called. It wants its terrible meta back.
It wants its card back.
However, though, like you said, this is, this is again pretty much the best situation that Vinz could be in, considering this matchup, as I would anticipate that it's reasonably favorable or a good matchup for the Even Shaman. And, Savvat is off to a pretty good start. Coin, just 2 3-drops, or 3 2-drops, sorry, 3 turns consecutively, filling out all the mana. Very nice and ahead on board for the moment. But this is the situation that Spiteful Druid expects to find itself in. You catch up with these powerful taunts after you've already fallen behind.
And Vinz does take an alternate line from that obviously strong Saronite Chain Gang this turn, just to shut down that Flame Tongue Totem and prevent these favorable trades. It was very likely that Savvat had a clear, had the Saronite Chain Gang come down that turn, so Vinz took that alternate line.
And I'm just trying to find a play I really like on this turn, and it's not really there. Like, yeah, the +1/+1 buff doesn't feel amazing, because you can't clear off the board if you go for Defender of Argus, obviously. If you were to go for the Earthen Might, then you're still not clearing off the whole board, because it's only a +2 attack. So it's just going to have to be, like I thought, plowing through to face here. Still are going to be 4 minions on board, however, but you're never going to play an Even Shaman and not have more than 4 minions on board at some point. And if your opponent is going to use Mind Control tech, this is definitely one of the best situations that they could do it in.
It is important to note that Vinz, everything that he draws is going to be buffed, yes, but his hand right now is a little bit lacking. He hasn't found Spiteful, he hasn't found Red Archivist or Ultimate Infestation. It is possible that he does run out of resources and gets into that top decking situation. We're still a couple of turns off from that, but I think that's sort of what Savvat is banking on at this point.
The thing is, though, for Savvat here, like, even if there are those lackluster draws at the moment, if the game goes on for many, many more turns, I would have to put Vinz ahead, because while he doesn't have necessarily the higher value deck, if you include Hagatha into the mix, just in terms of, like, it's not about infinite value where you both are applying 0 pressure. The Spiteful Druid will use their value as a higher pressure options. Like, if the Hagatha ends up with 20 Forked Lightnings, that's more value technically, I suppose, but it's not doing anything. You need to be able to kill your opponent, which this Shaman deck looks like it might be struggling to do. Oh man, Spiteful Druid is so dumb.
Cry off stage. Keep it together, man.
It's so dumb.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think you got the crowd with you on that one.
I think I probably do.
He's going to take another turn to deviate from the obvious plan, however.
I mean, this still puts up a tremendous amount of stats on the board, and it's just realizing, you know, this is make sure there's, if I clear off the board as much as possible this turn, I don't lose to the stuff I could potentially lose to, like maybe Flame Tongue Totem, or, you know, clearing up the board into Hagatha, something like that.
Yeah,
He just needs
a hex into
exactly,
something else.
Exactly, yeah. Like you say, if he gets Deathwing and it's hexed, maybe that's enough of a tempo swing for Savvat to start to wrestle this back. But even so, in this situation, it's definitely not looking that way. We can see there is elemental synergy in the deck with the Fire Elemental and the Sandbinder there. So these Earthen Mites, he kind of wants to save them to actually generate an elemental out of it. But even then, that feels like it might just be too optimistic of a scenario. He just needs to not die here, basically.
Yeah, I would definitely expect to see Kalamos, perhaps even Alakir in this deck.
Yeah, probably Alakir.
Yeah.
Kalamos would be pretty cool as well.
A girl can dream.
Of Kalamos, is that what you dream of?
Primal Lord.
Get you a man who can do not only both, but all four. Yeah.
Except the summoning one. We don't ever do that.
We never do that one.
Never do that.
Yeah, as we
And then
can
my
see,
nightmares are filled with this.
the follow-up is absurd here. A 5/5 Spiteful Summoner coming down to completely lock out the board. And it's kind of a situation for Vinz where even if there is a Hex in this scenario to just deal with whatever minion comes off of the Spiteful Summoner, that doesn't matter because he's still very firmly ahead on board. Even if it was just a 6-mana 5/5, it wouldn't be that bad, dear.
No, it would be more than good enough, I would think. And it is Ultrasaur.
Yeah, I'm just struggling to see any scenario in which Savvat comes back here. Hagatha is too slow. Hex off the top could slow things down, I suppose. But that is just going to be it. A 3-0 sweep.
Wow.
Devastatingly fast there for Vinz. As he tells us something there to the camera, that's got to feel terrible for Savvat. Losing 3-0 to a Spiteful Druid that got Keleseth into Spiteful every game?
That's especially unfortunate because Savvat brought a lineup that was unexpected, that was a bit unusual, but also I was personally hoping to see succeed because it is those former things. It's different from the norm. And then you have Vince coming up with what is likely just the best three decks that you could bring in this format and just saying, nope, Ingenuity's bad, Spiteful on 6, Keleseth on 2. And you know, sometimes the creativity pays off. This was not one of those times.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think it was even necessarily a match that was kind of foregone before he even started. Like, Savvat did not feel particularly vulnerable to Spiteful Druid with the majority of his decks. Like we were pointing out, the unreactiveness of Spiteful Druid could have been its undoing there, because if we saw an early Whispering Woods or maybe a powerful Oaken Summons with the Token Druid that Muzzy brought to playoffs, brought by Savvat as well, could have started to wrestle things back, but just wasn't quite there against the sheer aggression from that Spiteful Druid.
Unfortunate, but not necessarily unexpected. But that is going to do it for our first match of round number 2. Coming up next, we're going to have Nightbreaker taking on Zananana. So don't go anywhere, guys. More of round number 2 here at DreamHack Tours coming right up.